Hey everybody, Drew here, and you are in my shop with this beautiful 9th generation Corolla. Hey, right off the bat, I just want to tell you, I love these cars. I'm an owner-operator of a specialty car dealership. I bring in vehicles like this. You wouldn't know it today because it's one of those miserable Great Lakes type days, but this is a Southern unit, so is that Honda Accord behind it. I bring in super clean cars, niche cars, old cars that don't have any rust, and recondition them and get them to the public. That's what I do. And the 92 to 01 Camry, the 1990 to 2006 Lexus LS, 2004 to 2009 Prius, those are some of the absolute best cars ever made. And this 9th generation Corolla, the E110, E120, is in that mix. So like the other cars, I like to show you guys things you need to know about them. This one has some common problems I've been seeing a lot, and they're silly problems. So stay tuned. If you don't have these issues yet, you eventually will on your Corolla. First and foremost, actually, let me shut it off so it's nice and quiet. You hear it has a very low idle, and I'm actually surprised this one stayed running for us this long into the video. So this would show kind of like a car with an alternator problem. You jump it, it was dead. You jump it, it fires right up. It seems like it runs fine. Sometimes you like to sit and let it charge, and then all of a sudden it's struggling to run and it dies. In that condition, the alternator, which should show about 14.3 volts, a healthy battery will show like 12.3. I know it's a 12-volt system. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason why they call it 12 volts. It really runs on 14, or it should anyway. A healthy sitting battery is going to be like 12.3, 12.6 volts, something like that. And a healthy alternator is going to be over 14 volts. I mean, 13.9 is starting to be concerning. So you've fired it up. Everything's great. Maybe you check the voltage and it's, 14.3, and you walk away for 20 minutes. You come back and it's dead or about to die and shaking, and it can barely run, and you check the alternator and, oh my goodness, I need an alternator. It's at 12.5 volts or something like that, which an alternator making 12.5 volts will not. A car will inevitably fail in that condition. So what I want you to know is, in that particular case, many times it is actually an idle issue. Once the RPMs get so low, the car can't idle. The alternator can't produce enough voltage just because of those super low RPMs. I mean, obviously, if you twisted an alternator by hand, it's not going to make 14.3 volts. There's a minimum RPMs. And it's extremely common on these Corollas and a lot of older Toyotas in general that are drive-by-wire, meaning when you press the gas pedal, there is no cable. There's like a tube and a plate inside that opens to let air in, just like in a carburetor. There's no cable on this one. It's drive-by-wire. So what you've got to do, when I clean them, I actually take the throttle body off of the intake manifold with 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe they're 12 millimeters, whatever. Maybe they're 12s, I think. And I hold the pedal down. I put the key not in accessory, but on, not with the car running, obviously. It wouldn't run. And I have a pedal depressor, which is right there, that red tool right there. And it holds the gas pedal down all the way. That's open, and I clean the inside of that tube, because what happens is carbon builds up in that bore and on that little plate that does this, and it stops that from happening smoothly. So I clean that. You got to be very careful not to touch that plate or wiggle it in any way. But I clean inside there, and then basically put the negative terminal has to be on to do this, because you need the power for it to open. But then I take off the terminals, hold them together for a minute and a half. That's a capacitive discharge. It should reset the idle. And then I start the car, and it has to be at operating temperature, but I start the car on, off, and then start. And with my foot on the brake, put it in drive and just sit there for a couple minutes and enjoy a break from running around with, like my head cut off like a chicken. And it relearns its idle. Problem gone. The other area that you can have one of those silly little issues is the intake manifold gasket. That's such a common issue on these cars. You see on top of my messy part shelf right there, right in the center of your screen, is a stack of them, because it's super common on this car. That's a $4 part, and there's only a couple bolts to do it. You've got to obviously take off this cover, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, this isn't a video for how to fix it. I actually have one. I'll link it in the description. description. But that's a $4 part that can cause so many problems. The engine only has so many ways to know how much air versus gasoline it's getting. And if it thinks it's getting the wrong number, or if it has a number that it can't manipulate and control, you could get a lean or a rich condition. Obviously, or maybe it's not obvious to you, a warm car should run at 14.7 parts air for every 1 part fuel. And if it's getting too much air, it's not just going to keep adding fuel, it's going to trigger a lean condition. I mean, it could just keep adding fuel, but in that case, it would it would rev up the RPMs, because that's what you're doing with your foot. You're adding air when that plate inside the tube opens and the throttle body, and gasoline. That's how an engine runs. You add more air, you add more gas, keep it at 14.7 to 1, and the amount you put in is almost directly equal to the RPMs you get. So those are two silly little things. This one's a free fix, minus your time and a little bit of carburetor cleaner, or as the people across the pond call it, carburetor cleaner. Anyways, so you've got that silly little thing, this silly little thing. Now here's a real silly one. This has cost me 2 very miserable experiences with some of our customers. Both times it was a car that never gave me any trouble. Sold it to 2 wonderful families, 2 separate wonderful families, and this guy right here. If you look, this is stamped. It's, or I say stamped, it's made out of like sheet copper. So is that one. Now, we'll go over to my battery shelf, which is looking a little bit sad. Usually there's one of each kind of battery I deal with typically. I have the solid lead ones there. I like those better. That's what I use. And the first time, it was kind of terrifying. You know, these people put every dime they had into getting this car, and they enjoyed it for a day, and the next day they had, you know, a couple lights on the dash, no response whatsoever. So I, you know, dropped what I was doing and went to the parking lot where it was dead and started my diagnostics, and of course, it was this guy right here. I twisted and manipulated it, and the car started right away. I twisted it again, and I had the condition. So it was, you know, and obviously once I took it off, it was super obvious. But these go on old Toyotas. Another thing to keep in mind, I'm going to try to give you guys a good visual. Do you see right here? Follow that wire. I'm going to get you a better shot. Right there. See my finger hanging out in that little spot? Right there. Let me zoom in on it. Right in the dead center of your screen is, I believe that's a 12 millimeter. That is where the entire car gets ground. It goes from the battery to the engine, and then from the engine right here, that might be the transmission, whatever, down. Yeah, that's the transmission. And then right here on the strut tower connects to a spot, you know, nearby. So the entire, I'm not sure if you know how electrical systems in cars work, but every gizmo in the car that needs 12 volts gets it from, you know, here, or the fuse panel, or this fuse panel here. But anywhere it needs negative, it in almost every case, it's going to get that. And in this particular case, you can see for yourself, it's going to get it from either the body of the car or the engine. So you only need to run a positive. Then your ground, your negative, is either the body of the car or the engine, and the components in the engine need that, like the coil. Well, maybe not the coil packs. They are grounded, but not, you know, where they stick into the tube. You know, but everything. I believe on this particular car, the ground for the alternator is the body of the alternator, and that current, the negative current, or if you want to call it that, the negative is through the engine into that wire again. So that is absurdly important. Just that simple little thing. So if you have one of these cars, I want you to know they are stupidly simple. If you have one of these cars and you have like a blown engine or a bad transmission, don't be upset at me that this video doesn't address it. I just want to point out to you some of the silly little things that will strand you on the side of the road with an otherwise awesome car. And I know about these silly little things because I've had so many of these cars. I've been there, done that. And that's the point of this channel, by the way. I work, you know, again, my name's Drew. I own a car dealership that is intentionally dealing in super clean southern, like for example, this has 94,000 miles on it, and other than my snow mess, look at the interior. Look at the undercarriage of this car. Look at, those are the brake lines. So I deal where a car should be completely and totally rusted out, which, as you see here, there's, I don't know, maybe a foot of snow on the ground. 5-year-old, you know, I've seen 5-year-old Chevy trucks have lines burst and holes in the frame and things like that. Well, I deal exclusively in super clean stuff like this, but because I deal in old cars, I still deal with drama, and I like to show you guys that drama and how I fix it. So the 9th generation Corolla is one of the best cars ever made. It will always be remembered as that until history forgets, but it has quirks. These are some of them. If you like the style of this video, do please subscribe to the channel because I'm going to post more and more. And frequently check the description of this video because as I post more Corolla videos, I try to tie them all together. So anyways, I'm Drew. If I could fix it, you could fix it. If I could figure it out, you could figure it out. Hang in there if you're struggling. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.